everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a 12th Doctor story. It is The Caretaker. There's no television companion for the new series, so we just go straight into the review and the plot lines. The Doctor and Clara have been travelling through the universe. We see a montage of different adventures they've been on at the beginning here, and the relationship they have between each other is kind of like argumentative friends, really. Then we get to the situation of Clara trying to balance those adventures with her dates with Danny and her building of a relationship with Danny. She is obviously still going in school and teaching, and she's got that life as well, and the whole balance between it. It comes to a head when the Doctor decides that he doesn't want Clara about for a couple of days because he's going undercover for a project he wants to do himself. He ends up becoming the caretaker of Coal Hill School, where Clara is teaching, and where Danny's also teaching as a maths teacher. And because that's how they met in school, literally teachers going together. There's a lot of thing about the kids already picking up on this, and there's a nice little couple of comments there, especially from Courtney Woods, who comes into the plot a little bit later on. But you got the whole situation there with Danny and Clara, and the whole thing of Clara trying to make sure the Doctor and Danny are separate because she feels embarrassed about the whole clashing thing, and she doesn't know how to explain to Danny the whole situation about the relationship between them two because she thinks it might affect it and all this, and it's kind of like a personal plot between them all. In between all this, the Doctor has found a Skovot's Blitzer is on its way to Earth and is about to help destroy everything. Is about to destroy everything. And the idea with the Doctor is to make sure that it doesn't do that. And he set up time mines across Coal Hill School, posing as the caretaker, so he can and put it to another dimension. Danny kind of gets suspicious of what the Doctor's doing because he comes across a bit weird and odd throughout it, natural enough, and sees these time mine devices, starts taking them away and deactivating them, and tries to confront the Doctor just as the Skovot's Blitzer is coming in. The Blitzer is knocked away, but only for a short period, not forever. It will come back, and there's the dynamic then between Danny, the Doctor, and Clara trying to figure each other out, and Danny doesn't trust the Doctor, and the Doctor doesn't trust Danny, and Clara's in the middle going, oh my god, this is my worst nightmare, and all this sort of situation. When the Skovot's Blitzer comes back, Clara shows Danny the side of her being a bit of a decoy to try it, but she's willing to do it, and Danny's a bit concerned about that because he obviously cares for her and all that situation. Clara then leads the Blitzer into the hall where they tried to catch it the last time. The Doctor's built a kind of Ghostbusters like backpack, kind of command unit, so it can talk to the Doctor like it's Creator, to command the robot to shut down, which he manages with the help of Danny, distracting it just a little bit further by doing a backflip over it. The story ends with Danny accepting Clara's life and wants to make sure that Clara isn't lying to him anymore and always tells the truth about what's happening with them and shows how much he cares for him. And at the end of the day, the Doctor kind of accepts Danny that he's right, and this kind of fear that the Doctor thinks that Danny isn't right for her because he kind of cares deeply for Clara and doesn't want to be seen as hurt. And it's a nice little emotional piece in that respect. We'll go through each of the characters and then we'll go into some of the bits I do like of the story in a bit more detail. So we've got the Doctor, played by Peter Capaldi. This is the first turn of the Doctor, the way Capaldi, I think, wants to play it. Up till now he's been a little gruff, a little aloof, and this is the first time we actually see some proper emotional punch to the Doctor, and we see how and why the Doctor relies so much on Clara and how much he cares for her and doesn't want to hurt. And fears for Danny and doesn't like Danny, and he kind of is disparaging with Danny because Danny's a maths teacher, and because Danny was in the army, the Doctor doesn't like that kind of military type. Danny kind of susses out the Doctor another way, which will come in a minute. It's interesting how it all pans out between them and the relationship they have between each other. It's a really interesting dynamic. But Peter Capaldi, he's still the gruff, aloof Doctor we get in Series 8, but there's the signs of the caringness and the weirdness of this Doctor, that the all-round alienness and weirdness of the Doctor that we have of the 12th Doctor. The bits when he's become the caretaker, he's trying to get things going and people keep interfering in what he's doing, and his projection of trying to be as human as possible, although he knows he's been completely weird when he's talking to them at the beginning when he comes in, and he's over-talking, and then his conversations he's having with all the staff as he goes around. It's quite interesting how that all works out, and the whole difference between everything is actually quite nice. You've then got the fact that obviously he does care deeply for Clara, and his arrogance and not arrogance, but kind of hurt that she's, he understands she's dating and he accepts that. But when he notices Danny and sees Danny, he doesn't really take to him that well. And it's interesting seeing that outlook in him, and how he feels that Danny might hurt him because he's a soldier, and he doesn't want her to be with a soldier because he feels that she'll get hurt rather hard, which is an interesting way of putting it across. Ultimately, though, I actually quite like the way the character works. His zany bits. You've got the bits where he's in the caretaker's office and Courtney comes in, and the whole thing about the door sign. He says it says keep out, and she said, and Courtney says no, it says go away humans. And the doctor's line of never lose your temper in the middle of writing a door sign. I love that. That kind of these little quips that he's starting to bring in, this kind of weirdness here, and you can see why people warm to Capaldi so well. And he's trying to find his feet here of the character, and he's trying to learn the character, and there's elements that are coming out, he's thinking, ooh, that's maybe a bit too far, but there's elements you go, yes, this is who I am, and I like it, sort of thing. And I love the way Capaldi plays it. He never puts a foot wrong with anything he gets. Then you've got Jenna Coleman playing Clara Oswald. As I keep saying, Jenna Coleman doesn't put a foot wrong with whatever she gets in front of her, and I think this is one of the stronger character moments for Clara, this kind of pain she has between trying to have her life with the Doctor but also have a life with Danny and make sure the two never meet because of the conflict that could happen, and the whole embarrassment and cringiness she has when they do finally meet and they don't hit it off initially, and the kind of lack of respect between the two of them really does make it work for me in regards to the way Clara feels, and you do feel for her in this one. And Clara was a glorified plot point in Series 7. She has more of a character in Series 8, and then she becomes a bit more of a glorified plot point again in Season 9, and we'll get to that. But ultimately, I think it's a nice little role. I think she plays it quite sweetly, and I do like the way the character is written here, and I think it's nicely done overall. You've then got Samuel Anderson, who plays Danny Pink. I like the way that Danny comes across on screen. You've got that soldier aspect, because there is that kind of militarized thinking in the way he is and trying to care for Clara, but he's got a very soft side to him, which I really do like, and I think it really works for the character on screen. Ultimately, though, I quite like the bristleness between him and the Doctor, because this kind of yes sir and the army thing, because Danny doesn't quite like the fact that the Doctor has an air of aristocracy about him, and he kind of chafes against it because the Doctor's a Time Lord, and Danny picks up on that, and the whole fight between them is really quite nice. It culminates in Death in Heaven, Dark Water, and you can see that there's still that kind of slight mistrust between them in that story, but it starts here when they meet each other initially, and it's quite a nice little role that's played by Samuel Anderson here. Then you've got Ellis George, who plays Courtney Woods. Annoying teenager. She seems to be a troublemaker. There's kind of reference here that all the teachers kind of hate Courtney Woods because she's a bit of a troublemaker, and the parents are a bit overbearing, and Courtney doesn't seem to have any lines in the sand that people can go with. She's always intense. And this kind of annoying little kid that comes in, it helps play off the bit of the more narky role that Peter Capaldi has, the kind of bitter side that the character has, and it's nice to have that play off. It's okay. It's really an introduction here, and I love the bit at the end when she's going on the TARDIS journey with them, and she feels a bit sick and shows her true side. I do like the way it's played. L.S. George plays it quite well. You then got Edward Harrison, who plays Adrian, who is purposely there as a kind of Matt Smith-looking character. And at one point, the Doctor thinks that's Danny, and approves for obvious reasons. It's found out that Adrian isn't. Adrian's just a colleague, but it is played okay. But it's not played like Matt Smith. It's played with a more Professor-ist outlook, which is interesting in itself. It's okay. You've got other characters. You've got Mr. Armitage, played by Nigel Betts, the bumbling head teacher. He's okay. I don't mind him. You've got the Scovox Blitzer, played by Jimmy V, and you've got to remember, everybody, for some reason I have in my head the Scovox Blitzer is tall and massive, but actually the Blitz is quite small. It's quite petite. It's certainly lower than the height of the three main characters, but it's very powerful. It's a big, powerful robot, very similar to like Sir Kinalot and Robot Wars, sort of bulkiness. I wonder if that's maybe where the idea comes from a little bit. Played by Jimmy V, obviously just a character. Jimmy V doing his acting again for the show. I think this is one of the last times he appears. It's you know, not much. He's sitting there in a thing that doesn't move that much. And the voice is done by Matthew Cox, which works okay. It's not a bad little character. It is the big bad of the week, and it doesn't have much. It's a misguided robot, and you don't get much into the robot itself. It's there to destroy. The Doctor tries to stop it and does eventually, and it's one of those ones. You've then got the appearance by Chris Addison as Seb. It's interesting how he comes in as kind of like the secretary of the Neversphere. The Neversphere is mentioned for one of the first times in the series, and you get the sense of the beginning of the character that we see in Dark Water, Death and Heaven later in the series. So it's played okay, it's played solid, and you get a kind of grumpy Missy with Michelle Gomez coming in the background there, and Seb making a comment saying the boss is not really happy at the moment, and it's interesting. It's fun, but it's not brilliant. It isn't brilliant. It's just basic overall. It's written by Gareth Roberts and Stephen Moffat. It's not a bad little script. I think the basis of the plot is fine. Gareth Roberts is not bad with his fantastical basis. He does seem to work better with his kind of more stories that are based in the present day and the kind of fantastical adventures. If I remember rightly, he has quite a love for the Pertwee era, and it's kind of that elements of the aliens coming to Earth, which is quite nice. You've got the moments with Stephen Moffat as well, who's co-writing. I believe Gareth Roberts wrote most of it, and Stephen Moffat filled in some of the blanks possibly. And you can tell that with the interface, the way the Clara, Danny, and the Doctor play each other. That's consistent with the stories later on. I think that's really quite nice. And I think the writing overall was quite good as well. There are a good few bits in the story, and I'll get into them first before we go any further. Clara's disgust and embarrassment of the Doctor being the caretaker of the school, she kind of confronts him rather quickly and scolds him like a teacher to a pupil. What you doing here? You know, you shouldn't be here. This is embarrassing. The bit when the Doctor pops up in the window when Clara's teaching about Pride and Prejudice and Austen in the classroom, because she's an English teacher, and the fact that she's put on the blackboard, on the whiteboard, that Pride and Prejudice was written on 1797, but actually it was written in 1796, and the Doctor has this quip about the whole story about Jane Austen. Clara gets a bit annoyed with him, saying, "Oh yeah, you must have tea with her and all this," and you know, this whole thing with the class is quite interesting. The soldier factor and the fact that the Doctor now calls him PE, even though he's not a PE teacher, he's a maths teacher, and that kind of thing that the Doctor seems to do when he's not quite sure of a character. He calls him a nickname, a derogatory nickname, which then becomes a bit more loving as time goes on. Mickey the Idiot is another example from Eccleston's era and into Tennant's era. If his character he's not quite sure of or doesn't quite trust, he'll have a nickname for them in a disparaging way, and this is a continuation of it with PE. The whole thing about Danny acting like a soldier and the Doctor's annoyance about this shows the nasty streak of the 12th Doctor a little bit, and the whole annoyance of it, and the whole fact that Clara tries to fool the Doctor by having Danny come in a kind of with the invisibility watch the Doctor's created is interesting, and the whole fact the Doctor susses it out rather quickly, and the whole argument they have in the TARDIS is interesting. And it's more the fact the Doctor's hurt that Clara's trying to fool them than anything else, and this kind of grudging respect that he has at the end, because the way Danny helps save the day really does come across as quite nice at the end, and the whole dynamic changes a little bit. A grudging respect, and I think the Doctor appreciates that as time goes on. There's a lot of fleshing out between the three of them, which I've mentioned already, which is really nice, and the emotion the Doctor shows as well is really a nice touch. The plot is kind of carries on quite well. It's written okay, it's written solidly enough. It's a nice little fun adventure. It's kind of hollow. There's not much to it outside the character moments. There's not much of a development there. There is that kind of plot point near the end with the Neversphere element, which is obviously part of the arc. But apart from that, it's kind of basic plotting, basic adventure story. It works okay, it's quite fun. It's directed quite well by Paul Murphy. I think it's quite a nice little direction. It's very standard. I like the low shots you've got when the Skovot's Blitz is going through places. I like the way the camera is kept to the eye line of the Blitzer more than the eye line of the characters to make them more menacing. I do like that kind of shots. It's quite interesting having that whole setup of a robot going through school corridors that can actually be quite narrow. It's interesting seeing the kind of, it may not be tall, but it's big in stature and scary, and the way that's put across is quite well. There's a lot of low down stuff in here. It's not very much eye level. It's very just below, and it kind of gives a sense of foreboding of kind of something creeping over us, and that kind of, it makes it a bit more, the whole emotional factor between the three main characters is a bit more bearing, because they're looking down on you, you're not looking over them, and it kind of gives this kind of more uncomfortable, overbearing feeling, which really does work for this. And I think the direction actually works quite well from this, and Paul Murphy does a decent job. Who also does a decent job and hasn't really caused too much of a problem is Murray Gold, when he can go whimsical with the sonophone bit when the Doctor's been nuts with the caretaker elements late, middle of the story, the kind of xylophony motifs he's got. I actually quite like it. I think it's quite fun. It kind of keeps the plot going, and it's quite enjoyable to watch and see. And I quite like that, and I think it's one of the better elements of it. And Murray Gold's music isn't too bad here. You've got the orchestral pump near the end, which you kind of need. But it's not overbearing. It's actually not too bad for this one, and it's not annoying. It actually does complement the story quite well, and I like it for that. Overall, yeah, it's a story. It's not take your brain out. There is a bit more to it. I do enjoy it, and a personal preference, this score is more for the personal preference than anything else. And I will rate this at 3.5 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the stories within the Peter Capaldi era I've reviewed so far, and also all the stories I've reviewed for the whole of the TV series so far as well. So the Caretaker sits in at 3.5 TARDIses out of 5 with Listen and Knock Knock. We then have at the top Darkwater, Death in Heaven with 4 TARDIses out of 5, and at the bottom is Sleep No More with 2.5 TARDIses out of 5. Sleep No More, of course, is one of the 2 stories overall that have had 2.5 TARDIses out of 5. The other one is, of course, Time Lash. And at the top are still 6 stories with 4.5 TARDIses out of 5. They are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Case of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That's it for this Doctor Who review. Thanks very much for watching. What do you think of the Caretaker? Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Do you not like it? Leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. And if you like the channel as a whole, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General, new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. And the next video is actually on Wednesday at 6 PM GMT with the Christmas review, The Next Doctor. Hopefully you can join me for that. But if you want to help support the channel more, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/Deanstructor. For as little as £1 or $1 a month, you can help support the channel. Teamstructor Level 1, you can get your name at the end of the video. Level 2, you get that, plus also 1 week in advance at least, notice of the videos coming out, so you can see the videos in advance of everybody else. Level 3, you get those 2 perks, but you also get a chance to have extra videos available. So if you want to help support the channel a little bit more than just hitting that like button and subscribe button, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/Deanstructor. I will see you on Wednesday for the review of The Next Doctor. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later.